Hello, I'm Anita McVeigh, and this is the Iran War Today, our daily briefing, bringing you up to date with all you need to know on day 59 of the US-Israel war with Iran. Let's start with some of today's key developments. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi praises the strategic relationship between Moscow and Tehran as he meets Vladimir Putin for talks on the war. Oil prices climb again as peace talks between the US and Iran stall and shipments through the Strait of Hormuz remain limited. Israel's military says it's launched fresh strikes against Hezbollah sites despite the ongoing ceasefire. But we begin our daily briefing with the latest on the diplomatic front. Iran's foreign minister is now in Russia, the latest stop on a tour which also included Oman and Pakistan. It comes after Donald Trump cancelled a planned trip by US officials to Pakistan over the weekend, claiming it would be wasting too much time. Immediately after arriving in Russia, Abbas Araghchi blamed the US for the failure of peace negotiations in Pakistan. He then thanked Vladimir Putin for his support while praising the strategic relationship between Moscow and Tehran. Mr. Putin promised to continue to support Iran, saying he hopes peace will prevail. Well, let's speak now to Bahman Kalbasi from BBC Persian. He joins us live now from New York. Bahman, good to see you. How important for Iran right now is this strategic relationship with Russia?
It has been reported the Russians were helpful in the war, intelligence-wise, and of course the support they gave in the Security Council. So that strategic relationship, as Mr. Araghchi, the foreign minister of Iran, just mentioned, is important. There was a meeting with the senior military officials in Russia as well. There has been warnings by Russians that Israel and the U.S. might be regrouping and getting ready for another round of attacks. So this all could fall under the continuation of this relationship, and Iran getting assistance from Russia in preparing for a possibility of a resumption of the war, as well as looking to Russia for ways to maybe play a role if the nuclear file were to be settled. Especially one of the most important sticking points is U.S.'s insistence that Iran's 60% enriched uranium be sent out of Iran, something Iran says it will never do and never allow, but maybe the middle way would be that that material goes to Russia. So all of those are obviously things that they would talk about, and this regional trip is about the Iranian government trying to find ways to end the war on its own terms. As we've heard now, a proposal given to Pakistanis that will give the Americans an option of settling the issue of Strait of Hormuz, opening that for now in return for end of the war, official end of the war, and lifting of the blockade, and then pushing the can down the road when it comes to the nuclear file. It's unclear how the United States will respond to that. We heard passingly from the United States president that this was a positive move, but it was not enough. And we know there's a Situation Room meeting about that today as well in the White House. And very briefly, Bahman, if you would, how concerned do you think Iran is about President Putin's continued support in terms of the fact that he is keeping an eye, of course, on his strategic relationship with the United States? They think Mr. Putin is more on their side than it is on the United States' side. Obviously, Mr. Putin has also been proven not to be the best ally at all times. During this the 12-day war in June, there was a lot of rumblings in Iran that Russia didn't come to our aid. There was more assistance apparently during the 40-day war. So it's not a solid alliance that will always be there, but it is one that Iran hopes to be able to count on in circumstances that is very fluid as we are in right now. Okay, BBC Persian's Bahman Kalbasi, thank you very much. And let's join our reporter Lisa Vogt from the BBC Russian service now. She joins us from Berlin. Lisa, what is Russia getting out of these talks?
Well, Anita, as you just discussed, Russia and Iran, they have a very special, somewhat complicated, yes, but very special relationship. They have had an intense defense cooperation. Iran helped Russia with drones when Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022. And that's why when Israel and the US attacked Iran and Russia didn't or couldn't interfere, many thought that it did put Russia in a somewhat awkward and uncomfortable position because on the one hand, Vladimir Putin couldn't help an ally, even though no formal agreement to do so in the event of an attack have ever been reached. But on the other hand, we know, yes, how important this relationship with President Trump is for Moscow and how Moscow is trying to leverage this relationship to achieve goals in Ukraine. We know that Vladimir Putin has offered President Trump to become some kind of a broker in his dealings with Iran, and Russia has already repeatedly offered to store Iran's enriched uranium as a way of diffusing tensions in the region. But so far, the United States has been rejecting these offers, even though President Trump recently admitted that he talks to Putin. And given that the current U.S. negotiations with Iran are clearly struggling, I think Russia could be looking into playing a role of a peacemaker, intermediary, especially when so many countries, to many countries, maybe to even Russia's surprise, Iran turned out to be more resilient than expected. And I think this first official Iranian delegation's visit to Moscow since the start of this war should be seen in this context, because becoming an intermediary allows Russia to become again, more relevant in this region, to secure its position in the region, position that has been somewhat lost when Iran was attacked, when Bashar al-Assad's regime was overthrown in Syria, and of course to start a dialogue with the United States that suits Russia. It's a kind of dialogue where two countries can be seen as superpowers solving the biggest world's issues.
Just time for a brief answer, if you would. What do you think are the real limits of what Moscow and Russia is willing and able to do to help Iran right now?
There have been reports that Russia has been sharing intelligence with Iran, but that didn't really trigger any kind of harsh reaction from the United States, with President Trump seemingly unbothered by it. Moscow never promised Iran to interfere in any kind of war with the U.S. or other countries' participation. That's just not part of their agreement. And again, it's worth noticing that perhaps to Tehran's disappointment, Moscow's reaction to the war has been not very, very restrained. But it's very clear that for Russia, Ukraine stays the main priority, and building up on this relationship with President Trump has to be the main focus for Moscow.
OK, Lisa Vogt from the BBC's Russian service. Thank you very much. Well, with the warring sides still seemingly far apart on key issues and tanker traffic through the Strait of Hormuz at a near standstill, oil prices have resumed their upward march. There's also growing concern for the fate of crews waiting for an opportunity to sail through the strait. The head of the UN's International Maritime Organization has called for seafarers being held in the Gulf to be released immediately. While he hasn't mentioned any names, it's thought he was talking about the crews of 2 ships detained by Iran. They're believed to have been part of a convoy attempting to transit the Strait of Hormuz over the weekend during a brief period when the route appeared to reopen. The Secretary-General of the IMO also stressed the importance of ensuring freedom of navigation through the crucial waterway.
The freedom of navigation is not negotiable for IMO, and no country has the right to obstruct the traffic on a strait for international navigation. That's not only the United Nations law, the Sea Convention, but it's international customary law. Equally, at IMO, under the SOLAS Convention, the Safety of Life at Sea Convention, the traffic separation schemes are mandatory and adopted here and put in place for the safe operations. Equally, there's no legal basis for the introductions of any tax, any customs, or any fees on straits for international navigation.
The Israeli military says it has begun hitting Hezbollah positions in Lebanon's Bekaa region and in other areas across the south of the country. The ceasefire deal agreed by Israel and Lebanon earlier this month appears increasingly fragile, with both sides accusing each other of repeated violations. On Sunday alone, Israeli strikes killed 14 people in Lebanon. The Israeli military says an IDF soldier was killed in a Hezbollah drone attack. This marks the deadliest day since the truce came into effect earlier this month, according to Lebanese officials. Here's our Middle East correspondent, Lina Sinjab.
The past few days, almost on a daily basis, there has been airstrikes with people being killed in the south of Lebanon, while we're talking about an extended ceasefire for another 3 weeks. The Israelis say they want to protect their northern border, but the Israeli Prime Minister had given orders for his troop to, accelerate attacks on Hezbollah, and that's also during the period where we're talking about ceasefire. Hezbollah, by its turn, said that it will have the right to retaliate whenever there is an attack, and they can retaliate within the Lebanese territories, but also in northern Israel. And we have to remind our audience that the Israelis also have boots on the ground. They control, big swathe of land in the south of the country, which the Lebanese see as an occupation. And this is also part of the negotiation to have the Israelis pull out of the south of Lebanon to allow hundreds of thousands of civilians to go back to their destroyed homes. In fact, many villages on the borderline have vanished because of the Israeli demolishing any sign of life there. So at the moment, the ceasefire is very fragile, although there is a diplomatic commitment to make it last. The US President Donald Trump, when he announced the extension of the ceasefire, he also talked about attempts for meeting between the Lebanese president and the Israeli prime minister, which is not really clear if it's going to happen, given that neither side have confirmed it, and given the hostilities that are, increasing in the past few days. But Lebanon is in dire need for a lasting ceasefire, for, the Israelis to pull out from the south, and for people to go back to their homes and villages. Over 1 million have been forced to flee their towns and villages, and they're desperate to go back and have some sort of normality.
Lina Sinjab. US President Donald Trump says his intervention has helped spare 8 Iranian women from the death penalty. Iran has rejected the claim, insisting that none of the women were facing execution and accusing the president of spreading false reports. The BBC's chief international correspondent Lise Doucette explains what we know about the women and the arguments surrounding their fate. She's reporting from Tehran on condition that none of her material is used on the BBC's Persian service. These restrictions apply to all international media organizations operating in Iran.
President Trump says he has saved 8 Iranian women from execution. Iran's judiciary says that's not the case. So what do we know? Trump's intervention came after a photograph circulated online showing that the 8 women were on death row, accused of crimes linked to the nationwide protests here in January, which were crushed with lethal force. The president posted twice on his Truth Social platform about these women, and he asked Iran to pardon them. Iran's judiciary issued a statement saying none of the women were facing execution and accused the president of making fake reports. We asked to speak to a judicial official here and are awaiting a reply. But we did speak to the director of an Oslo-based organization, Iran Human Rights, Mahmoud Amiri Moghadam. And he shared with us what they know about 5 of the women. 2, he said, have been released on bail last month. But 2 are facing possible death sentences. And 1, Bita Hemati, is facing execution. She was arrested in January along with her husband during the protests. And the executions by hanging are continuing. Iran's judiciary has confirmed that at least 5 took place over the past week, most accused of spying for Israel. Human rights groups regularly condemn Iran's human rights record, saying that last year, at least 1,639 Iranians were executed. That's the highest on record since 1989.
Lise Doucette. Whether you're joining us on YouTube, TikTok, Sounds, radio or TV, thanks for your time. We'll be back tomorrow with the Iran War Today.